I am the awakened one. Welcome, everyone, to another book review. And you too can become awakened with the book I have for you, 3 Steps to Awakening by Larry Rosenberg with Laura Zimmerman. And that with is going to be quite important. And I'll talk a little bit more about that at the end. Why did I read this book? Well, I wanted a book about meditation and Buddhism, so I sort of went to my local library and just picked whatever off was on the shelf. And this book review is a reason of why you should not do that. Pick your books very carefully, otherwise you will waste your time, as I mostly have done with this book. This book was published in 2013, and it's put into 2 parts roughly. There is the practicing of awareness and then the living of awareness. So the first part is a guide to meditation. So he will talk about what you should do, how the Buddhas or the Buddhism practices were put into place, and what he took from them studying. He is a very experienced practitioner, so he founded the Insight Meditation Center in Cambridge, Massachusetts, however you say that awful state's name. And the second part of the book, the practice, living of awareness, is okay. So you're practicing your meditation, you're getting some insights from that. How do you apply that to your normal everyday life? I would say the book style is written with the chapters at the start. The start of the chapter has him talking about, okay, this is sort of what you can do. You sort of sit in this position. This is what I teach my students, and then at the end it'll have some Q&As of people asking, or what he has deemed as the most pertinent, obvious questions to be asked of him, and then his sort of answering style. The book is relatively short. It's only 156 pages, so you can smash it out pretty quickly, and the typing is not super big as well. And I'll get onto the main theme. So there was only really one, which is the 3 steps to awakening, to gaining more insight. And I don't think he's particularly claiming or makes any claims about what awakening is, what nirvana is, or things like that. The book is more focused solely on the meditation style of things, rather than the, I guess, grand philosophical aspects of Buddhism and what can be gained from doing meditation. So there's 3 steps that he has. There is whole body breath awareness, there is breath as the anchor, and then choiceless awareness. He deviates a little bit from the traditional Buddhism, which I believe is more of the first 2 steps rather than the last one, although it's sort of hard to tell with his writing style, and I'll talk about that as well soon. But it deviates from, I guess, the 16-step Anapanasati Sutta taught by the Buddha. So basically there is a sutta, like a big text where you can sort of read, okay, these are the 16 steps that the Buddha actually used and taught to his disciples of, I guess, the correct meditation practice, or, it's sort of hard to say correct, but what he taught, essentially. It did get me thinking, because he did say right at the start of the book and then throughout it that his practice it has deviated from these other things. And so this book is sort of his recommendation of what he has found very useful for himself, and then also teaching to his students. So it is quite a bit different in the sense that, how far can you stray from Buddhism until it's not particularly Buddhism anymore, it's your own thing. This book is probably still very much on the path of the Buddhist tradition. So I wouldn't say it's, strayed too far or anything like that. But it did get me thinking just about, okay, this book, when he says that, it made me think, oh, okay, so there's a couple of caveats already. One, this is my own personal experience, and this is what really helps for me. He also mentions quite a few times about the fact that it's really hard to express a lot of what he's trying to say in written form, and then it's best actually in a word or audio form. Which then gets me thinking, okay, why is this written in book form then? Why haven't you put it out as a podcast or something? So my own personal observations from the book, it wasn't very well defined or summarized, and I found his words just very unclear throughout. So even though there was, a very clear section, like a section saying, okay, this is what you're going to do in this first part on the whole body breath awareness, this is how you practice it. I found it very jumping all over the place. Like it didn't stick to the core theme of it. And go from, for me, what would seem like a logical step of doing it. It sort of seemed to jump here and jump there, and then, it just didn't connect with me at all. What I did find useful about the book was the Q&A sections, which he had at the end of each chapter. These actually were some of my questions that I was asking from it, or thoughts that came into my own head. And he did address particular aspects, but it also, once again, I just didn't connect with it. I didn't feel like, yeah, okay, I'm getting a lot of good, solid, practical steps to actually do meditation. It felt just very vague. So I guess for me, it's in summary, it's a short book that is neither an intro nor advanced meditation practice. A lot of the words he uses, you can totally understand. You don't need to be a Buddhist to understand what he's trying to talk about. It's definitely not an intro sort of book. Otherwise, it would have been, I think, written a lot more clear. So it sort of seems to be in this intermediate range. But it just, for whatever reason, it didn't particularly spark my imagination or make me go, oh, okay, I can sort of see what he's trying to get at here. Just very vague, very unclear. I didn't come out of it thinking, yep, I know what I need to do now. It was more, I'm confused as hell. I don't know what he's trying to say. So it comes across as scattered. And this gets to the part of written with Laura Zimmerman. And he also explains how in the acknowledgement section, so right at the end, he explains, okay, this book wasn't particularly written by him. It was a collection of his teachings and of his audio, his verbal stuff that he has taught to his students, and then collected by one of his grad students, I believe, Laura Zimmerman. And I should actually check that. I have the book right in front of me. And it just didn't feel like it was written in the traditional book style. And well, that's because it wasn't. It was written in a style where it was just, I think you can tell, it was just written in different places, sort of collated together. And I'm not sure the actual author sat down and said, okay, I've got a very clear structure of how I want to write this book. I'm going to do multiple editing stages. I'm going to make sure this is super clear and written in a very logical format. For me, it sort of explained to me, okay, yeah, this was just collated all together, and then we try to meld it together as best possible. And yeah, so she was a long-term student, highly skilled editor, and also a wonderful friend. Beautiful. So overall, I'm going to give the book 3 Steps to Awakening a 4 out of 10. It's pretty low for me. I don't feel I'm going to become awakened from it. I didn't find it particularly useful, and I'm struggling to think of who I could recommend this sort of book to, because like I said, it's not particularly for intro people. I wouldn't say it's particularly for advanced people either, but it wasn't written in a clear style for someone who's sort of intermediate, which I guess I would sort of say I'm at, can find useful. So there we go. This was something pragmatic I'm going to take for it. I've already taken it. He talked a lot about his friend, his mentor, Jiddu Krishnamurti. And I talked about this in a recent podcast as well on one of the latest meanderings, perhaps musings, can't remember which. We put out way too much stuff. And so I've had one of his books in my to-read list for a long while, and him talking about some stories about Jiddu Krishnamurti in this book made me go, oh, okay, I really like this dude. I want to read one of his books instead, sort of, rather than this. So I plowed my way through it. The only reason I got through it was because it was one of my monthly goals, and because it was so short that it didn't feel like I was wasting a whole lot of time. And once again, not a particularly useful book that I could recommend to anyone. If you made it this far, please, I would very much appreciate if you want enlightenment, if you want some awakening, if you leave a comment, I will respond, and you can get the wisdom of Chiron. But yeah, if you could leave a comment, if you're listening via the podcast, it would be awesome if you could leave us a review. And that's it for today. Hope you enjoyed. Chiron out.